Unfortunately, and that may be too light of a word, tragically, Dharun Ravi picked on the wrong kid.
Welcome to News Beast. We've got Jay Michaelson in the house today talking about a piece you wrote on a story you've been following about Dharun Ravi, who yesterday got a 30-day sentence for, some people say, provoking the suicide of Tyler Clemente, his roommate at Rutgers. You say it was the right verdict, but you've already come under some fire for that, and certainly a lot of folks in the LGBT community are angry about this.
Sure, and justifiably so. I mean, this is a terrible story and a terrible tragedy. But the distinction that we have to keep in mind is between the story on the one hand and the law on the other. And obviously we don't want to scapegoat someone, while we do want to punish someone who's guilty of a crime. There's definitely a sense, I think, in the last few weeks that the facts of this case were actually not as clear as in a usual hate crimes case.
And you were one of the first people, frankly, to come out for a light sentence, making that distinction. But in recent hours, I suppose, since you posted this piece, you've gotten some hate mail from the left, which is a new experience for you.
That's right. The left are usually my allies and my friends, and it hurts a little bit more when it comes from people who I work with all the time and are in coalitions with. But I think that is kind of a good sign. It shows that there's discomfort on all sides. Actually, the judge in this case said he knew he was going to alienate everybody with the sentence that he put out, and he was right.
Well, if you're getting hate mail from the left and the right, I think you're doing something right. So good for you. Was there a sense, though, that the judge was treating this more as a prank than a crime, or do you think it is purely a matter of the difficulty of legislating or punishing a suicide at the end of the day, holding someone culpable for a suicide?
Well, that's the thing. That the suicide was technically, as a matter of law, not part of the case. Of course,
right.
If it weren't for the suicide, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. This would be a matter for the Rutgers University residence halls, and I'm sure they would have taken appropriate action. Dharun Ravi would have been thrown out, and that would have been the end of it. But of course, the suicide haunts this case, but it wasn't really part of it. And we don't hold criminals accountable for every consequence of every action that they undertake. And it would be anarchy if we did. We have to draw the line somewhere and say, unfortunately, and that may be too light of a word, tragically, Dharun Ravi picked on the wrong kid.
Yeah. Well, I always appreciate a good Bob Dylan reference. And one way that you actually put some perspective on this decision, this judgment, is by citing the song "The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll." Mm-hmm. Make the parallel clear for folks.
Well, so Hattie Carroll, the song is actually an escalating series of injustices, and it deals with the murder of an African-American made by a sort of wealthy white person in a lot of power, basically. And the highest injustice in the case actually comes at the end with a 6-month sentence for this murder. And I think a lot of people in the last 24 hours have responded to the Dharun Ravi verdict similarly, that it's horrible what happened, but even the worst part is what they perceive to be a miscarriage of justice. But the deeper meaning of Hattie Carroll, and actually an even more obscure song by Bob Dylan, the death of Who Killed Davy Moore, who's a boxer who dies in the ring. Dylan is often about the system of injustice that allows this to happen, and that's something that all of us do have responsibility for. So I actually think it's fine for people to feel rage and outrage around this case. It's outrageous and it's terrible, but we should direct the rage where it belongs, which is not just against one 18 or now 19, 20-year-old kid who, it was worse than a prank. I mean, it was pretty awful behavior. Sure. But not just to him, but to all of us for creating a world in which that's common.
Final question, what do you think America has learned from our experience in the wake of this suicide? Have we become more thoughtful about bullying as well as gay rights?
Well, I think we have. It's interesting that just in the last few weeks, the story broke about Mitt Romney's bullying a classmate, 30 some odd years ago. And I think that story would have been completely unremarkable before this case with Tyler Clemente and Dharun Ravi. I think this became a symbol, and a good symbol, for the kind of bullying that LGBT people face all the time, and a lot of people face all the time, regardless of sexual orientation and gender identity. And I think this was the right result because it recognized the symbolic importance of this case, while at the same time recognizing that this was a difficult case from a hate crimes perspective.
Well, Jay Michaelson, thank you for covering the story from the beginning for us, and Jay Michaelson saying that the controversial verdict was the right one.